Thank you, Yitzchak. Okay, Rabotai, b'siman tov u'mazal tov. We are doing now the Siyum, the completion of Massechet ARACHIN. The Sephardim say Arachim, the Ashkenazim say Erchin. What is the Massechet ARACHIN? It's a small Massechet, nevertheless, it's a tough one. It's not an easy one. And it's dealing with something that has nothing to do with today. It has to do with biblical times, up to Bet HaMikdash, in the time of Bet HaMikdash, and even little after, for some of the laws that are brought in the Massechet ARACHIN. Why is it called ARACHIN? Because most of the Massechet will deal with Erech, the value. In Hebrew, Erech means value. Value of what? Well, there was such a thing that people, the Jewish people, in those times, in biblical times, and in the time of Bet HaMikdash, they would give let's say, they would make a vow to give a certain amount of money for the maintenance of Bet HaMikdash, as well as other things. It's called Hekdesh, the sanctified fund for the purpose of Bet HaMikdash, as well as the Kohanim. There is what we call Koche Bedek HaBayit, for the maintenance of the building. And there is also that which will belong to the Kohanim, since the Kohanim had no properties, had no land, as well as the Levim. So there was such a thing as people donating sums of money. Based on what? One of the things upon which they based that donation which they sanctified to Bet HaMikdash was their own value. It was a certain belief. There was a certain belief that a person gives his own value to Bet HaMikdash, to the Hekdesh of Bet HaMikdash. What's the value? Can we put a value on a person? It's impossible. It's only symbolical that the Torah allowed us to fix a certain amount on people depending on their age and the value of their capability of working. The Torah, for example, tells us that the value of a person, not chas v'shalom that it is a value, that the real worth of a person, for that there is no value. It's impossible to estimate a person. But since it is needed for that purpose, when a person says, Hare erki alai, I am donating to Bet HaMikdash my own personal value. So, the Torah tells us that, for example, if we are talking about a male between 20 to 60 years old, that's the time when a person, when a man has his utmost value. That's the best time, because he can work, he can do a lot of things between the age of 20 and 60, and therefore the Torah puts it in a sum that is symbolical as a value for 50 shekel, 50 shekalim. It's a big amount of money, but still that doesn't mean that it is the life of a person. It's only a symbolical amount that this way one will allow himself to say that he is giving his own value to Bet HaMikdash, and probably there was a great segula in that, maybe to even save his own life, maybe to nullify a gezerah on himself. If a person, for example, that's as far as the male, 50 shekel, but a female, for example, between 20 to 60 years, it's only 30 shekalim. That doesn't mean, chas v'shalom, that the value of a woman is any less when we talk about life. But we're talking about the value of that person's capability of doing things. So the Torah understands that a male has more potential than a woman. That's why she gives a value of 50 shekel for a male versus 30 shekel for a female. But when a person, for example, when a man reaches beyond the age of 60, then his value diminishes. And it becomes, over 60, it's only 15 shekel. 15 shekalim. For a female, only 10. There is, by the way, a certain page in the Gemara of Massechet ARACHIN in which we find that the value of a woman when she is very old in the house is more than the value of an old man. Because an old man is beracha levatala. Of course, he is a beracha. Basically, he is a blessing. But as far as his potential of doing things, he sits in the house, he doesn't do much. But a grandmother, an old woman, when she is at home, and she is surrounded by her family and everything, she cannot stay without benefiting the house. She's always busy preparing food, preparing this, even when she is very old. I remember this on my own grandmother, even when she was 90 years old. Alaiha Shalom, she was all the time busy peeling vegetables and preparing things. So therefore, her value in that case is more than a male. But officially, a male, when you put a value, that kind of value that you want to sanctify to Bet HaMikdash. So for a male, if he is between when he is a baby, 1 month, up to 5 years, it's only 5 shekel. For a female, it's only 3 shekel. Also between 5 years old and 20 years, also the potential is not so great. So for the male is only 20 shekel, whereas the female is only 10 shekalim. And so forth. So we understand that all this is only an estimate, as a symbolical estimate, as far as the hekdesh that you want, that a person can put on himself to give it as a donation to Bet HaMikdash. This is basically the subject of Massechet ARACHIN, and at the end we have at least 3 perakim, 3 chapters that deal with a sugya that we don't have also today, that we had in biblical times, and even in the time of Bet HaMikdash, that the laws of the first Bet HaMikdash, rather, not the second Bet HaMikdash, the laws of Yovel. The laws of Yovel is the 49th year, or the 50th year that the Torah says, that that means 7 times 7 cycles of 777. At the end of those 7 Shemitot, then all the slaves are to be set free, all the Hebrew slaves, even a person who became a slave just 1 year before the Yovel, and even though usually a Hebrew slave would become free after 6 years, even if he becomes a slave, let's say 1 year before the Yovel, automatically he is set free on the year of the Yovel. Also, houses that were sold in Eretz Israel, depending where exactly, if it is Ir Homa, if it is not Ir Homa, if it is Batei Hatzerim, there's a lot of details that we cannot now give you with proper explanation because of the time. But in those times, people, when they wanted to sell a house, he was given the possibility to regain his house. If he wants to redeem it again, he has the right, and the one who bought it from him, he has to give it back to him. If nobody redeems it, that in the year of the Yovel, it all comes back to the original owner. Now let me do the Siyum. I know we don't give it fair understanding, but what can we do? The last words of Massechet ARACHIN are this. Amar mor beshel aherim ani zoche. This is talking about a Kohen. A Kohen, let's say you are not a Kohen, and you sanctified, you gave to the Hekdesh your house. The house now belongs to Bet HaMikdash. However, you have the possibility that if you don't go and redeem it in the time of the Yovel, then it becomes the property of the Kohanim. And all the Kohanim share in that house. Alright? What about if a Kohen himself had a property and he gave it as a Hekdesh, comes the time of the Yovel, he wants to redeem it. So now he says the following. He says, this Kohen, he says, Well, listen, anyway, I would have gotten my share with all the Kohanim in the case when the property was not even mine. But in this case, this property is mine. That doesn't make sense that I should own it completely again? That's the idea of the last words. Amar mor b'shel acherim ani zoche midame. So the Gemara says, hatam zoche be'almahacha kashakile. Because the Gemara tried to imitate, to bring a comparison between a certain case to this case. So the Gemara says there is a great distinction, there is no comparison. Because in this case he wants to have it all, whereas in the other case, in the case of when the Kohanim all share, it's only the merit that he has, the privilege that he has to share equally with all the other Kohanim. So you cannot compare this. Nevertheless, we have to bring the case. Since the Torah says each one for anything that he has sanctified can come back to his own possession. So in this case also maybe we could say that even though it is a sanctified possession, it could come back also to the Kohen and it becomes his completely. Midame kodashav lav birshuto. Hacha birshuto. In the case of the korbanot, this is not his own. It belongs to the Kohanim in a way that is sanctified. But in this case, he wants it to have it all completely. Ela amar Rav Nachman itzterich. Sal kadatacha menahu ilu chtiv ki ahuzat olam hu lahem. Aname ahuzatohi. So there's a law that ahuzah is the house that you inherited. That one can come back to you in the time of the Yovel. So you might say that it is the same case. This case of the Kohen is the same case as Ahuzat Olam. The Gemara says, no, sir. It's not. There is no comparison. When we talk about this was talking about Sedeh Herem. That's another kind of sanctification that people made. The only difference is Ahuzah, an inherited property, could come back in the time of the Yovel, whereas something that was upon which they said this is Herem, it's a kind of sanctification that does not come back to you. Finished. So he said, the Gemara says, so therefore you cannot bring a comparison between Achuzah, which is an inherited possession, to something that was given to the Hekdesh as a Cherem. This is Achuzah, it can come back, but in this case it cannot come back because it is Sedeh HaCherem. Hadran alach hamocher sadeh. We have finished Massechet ARACHIN. Hadran alach Massechet ARACHIN ve'adrach alan. Da'tan alach Massechet ARACHIN ve'da'tach alan. La nitne sheminach Massechet ARACHIN ve'la titne sheminan. La be'alma haden ve'la be'alma de'ateh. Hi ratzon milefanecha Adonai Eloheinu lavutenu. Shtei toratcha umanutenu ba'olam hazeh uteh imanu le'olam haba Hanina bar papa, Rame bar papa, Rahman bar papa, Ahai bar papa, Abba Mari bar papa, Rafram bar papa, Rachish bar papa, Surhav bar papa, Adda bar papa, דרו בר פפא, הערב נא אדוני אלוהינו את דברי תורתך בפינו ובפיפיות עמך בית ישראל, ונהיה כולנו אנחנו וצאצאינו וצאצאי צאצאינו וצאצאי עמך בית ישראל כולנו ידעי שמך ולומדי תורתך לשמה. מאוהב ידך כמני מצוותיך כי לעולם היא לי, ליבי תמים בחוקיך למען לא יבוש, לעולם לא ישכח פקודיך כי בם חייתני, ברוך אתה אדוני למדני חוקיך. אמן אמן אמן. סלע ועד מודים אנחנו לפניך אדוני אלוהינו לאבותינו ששמת חלקנו מיושבי בית המדרש ולא שמת חלקנו מיושבי קרנות, שאנו משכימים והם משכימים, אנו משכימים דברי תורה והם משכימים לדברים בטלים, אנו עמלים והם עמלים, אנו עמלים ומקבלים שכר והם עמלים ואינם מקבלים שכר, אנו רצים והם רצים, אנו רצים לחיי העולם הבא והם רצים לבאר שחת, שנאמר ואתה אלוהים תורידם לבאר שחת אנשי תמים ומלמל לא יחצו ימיהם ואני אפתח בך יהי רצון מלפניך אדוני אלוהי כשם שעזרתני לסיים מסכת ערכים כן תעזרני להתחיל מסכתות וספרים אחרים ולסיימם, ללמוד וללמד, לשמוע ולעשות ולקיים את כל דברי תלמוד תורתך באהבה, וזכות כל התנאים והאמוראים ותלמידי חכמים יעמוד לי ולזרעי שלא תמוש התורה מפי ומפי זרעי וזרע זרעי עד עולם, ותתקיים בי בתהלך תנחה אותך ושוכבך תשמור עליך וקיצותה היא תשיחך כי בי ירבו ימיך ויוסיפו לך שנות חיים, אורך ימים בימינה בשמאלה העושר וכבוד אדוני עוז לעמו ייתן עונה ברך את עמו בשלום יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה בעלמא דהוא עתיד להתחדתה ולחייאה מתיה ולעסקה יתהון לחיי עלמא ולמבנה קרתא דירושלם ושכללה הכלך בגבה ולמעקר פול חנה נוכרעה מן ארעה ולעטבה פול חנה דשמיה לאתרה וימליך קודשה ברכו במלכותה ויקרב ויצמח פולקנה ויקרב משיחה חייכון ומכון וחיידכו בדיסאי מעגלות מן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהיה שמי רבה מברך לעולם ולמי עלמיה יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתעלה שמדק וקודשה בריחו לעילה מנקו ברכתה שירתה שבעתה ונחמתה דמירם בעלמה ואמרו אמן על ישראל ועל רבנם ועל תלמידון ועל כל תלמידי תלמידון ועל כל מאן דעסקין באורייתא דבעתרא דמדי בכל אתר ואתר אילנה ולהון ולכון שלמה חינה וחסדה וחיי עריכם זון רווחה ורחמי מנקודם אל העם הרי שמאי והרעה ואמרו אמן יהיה שלמה רבה מן שמאי חיים ושבע ושבע ונחמה ושזבה ורפואה וגולה וסליחה וכפרה רווח והצלה לנו ולכל עמו ישראל ואמרו אמן עושה שלום במרומיו הוא ברחמיו ויעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל ואמרו אמן